There's something about Rudy and the family.
When I hung around with him, it was not only me, it was another guy by the name of Cesar Gomez. But they were older than I was. And about 3 years. Probably Cesar was 4, I don't know, or both of them were 3 years older than I was. And we used to go out to dances and we used to go out drinking and, having a good time and, you know, going to parks and baseball games and stuff like that. And really like to play golf. We used to like to do that on the weekends or whatever, and we used to go over there just to mess around at the golf course. But I didn't play any golf, but I like to go just to the camaraderie, the guys. You know how it was, But it was good.
And I can't imagine, even when I grew up, Harlingen was pretty boring, pretty slow. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to do. I can't imagine being in the 50s and the early 60s didn't be different.
Being in your time that you were whatever, you had a lot of things to do. Even though, school and whatever, and the after activities after school and the weekends. And you had a lot of things to do, and we did it. We would, one thing that we used to like to go is go to San Benito and try to look up girls, pick up girls in San Benito, Texas. Yeah, that was one of the things, After Rudy left and whatever, and he joined the service, and then I think so did Cesar. But they were 3 years older than I was, so I couldn't join until a couple of years later, a year, 2 years and a half. I hung around with other guys, and we would. That was when the gangs in Harlingen started actually getting together instead of fighting. We started getting together and whatever, and the fighting started going away. We did fight in school, but it was with white boys, because we were always discriminated against. I mean, every year coming up in school, I remember ninth grade, man, we used to fight, it seemed like every day. The hallway, fighting, that going up the stairs and coming down the stairs, punching and kicking and whatever, and that's the way it was, And this was with a with a football team. And you're talking about white boys that are 6 foot something, and you're, 5 foot, 5'2", and having to defend yourself, and that's the way it was.
But why?
Because it was discrimination, and that's the way it was. I was a rebel. I really didn't give a shit about too much, And there was not too many people that, like a friend of mine, I come tell something, I'd punch him right in the mouth right away because I really didn't care, I mean, once I went to the service, that's when I learned discipline in the service. Oh my Lord, there was one incident, we were in boot camp, and this acting sergeant came and he says, make up your bed. It's 9 o'clock at night, right? I says, hey man, I'm going to bed. He said, make up your bed. So I said, you crazy. Comes and brings the sergeant, big Hungarian Sergeant Junko. He comes and gets in your face, says, you're gonna make your bed, you understand? Boy, right away you make your bed, boy. From that day, that discipline started. And I says, oh my Lord, I said, growing up, you think you're a badass, right? Once you get into the service, you get with so many people, and you have to get together to be one. And that's what they teach you. First, what the service does is they break you down completely, mentally and morally, and then they bring you up where they want you. And since we were in the Vietnam era, they wanted a killing machine, so they teach you to kill. And that's what they teach you to kill in boot camp. And that's what it is. It says, and they tell you every single day, if you don't listen to me, you're not going to survive. And if you don't listen to me, you're not going to survive. And you better get it, your brain, because you will not survive. But lucky for me, I didn't go to Vietnam. I went to Germany for 3 years. I was in for 4 years. I volunteered, and I was 4 years. But out of those, I started in Fort Bliss, Texas, and I went through my basic training. And then from there, I went to Virginia, and I went through my IAT training. And then from there I went to Germany. And then I was there for 3 years, and I came back to Fort Bliss to finish my tour, my actual 8 months of the last of my tour. And it was great for me, but for other people, and a lot of my friends in Harlingen in the valley, man, I could hear it, every week there were so many killed in Vietnam, so many killed in Vietnam, and so many killed in Vietnam. And that's a sacrifice of war. And even though they taught you and told you that you were going to war for this and that and whatever, there was a lot of people that didn't believe in it. A lot of people that thought you were baby killers and whatever. I'm glad I never ran into none of those people going into the airports when I was flying in and out. Because, when you come out of basic training, you go in, and when you come out, there is nobody that can tell you anything. They teach you to control yourself and to deal with a situation. If somebody comes to you and tells you, you have to take care of the situation. And that's what we would do. So anywhere that I would go, all you have to do is look at a person in their eyes, and you can tell if they're going to be an aggressor or not. So when they start talking and you confront them and you look at them and they back down, you don't have no problem. That is done. Other than that, you have to deal with the situation by force. And that's what we would do. That's what we were taught. After you got out of the service, you have to go through a transition phase. You have to mellow down. And a lot of stuff, not only that, cussing and whatever. You're in the mass home, whatever, and pass the fucking salt and do this. And then you go to the house and what the hell are you going to say, right? I mean, so you have to tone down. And yes, you have to tone down, and you have to just tone down and always think before you speak. But then you get smarter. He was 3 years older than I was. And he went to the service, and then it took me about a couple and a half years before I joined service. And actually, I joined in 1966 in March, and he was killed in 66 in September.
November 14th.
November 14th, right. So it wasn't that far, and that I had just joined, and I was in Germany at that time when I heard about it. And they're called 1049s. It's a request form to go to Vietnam. And I was in Germany. I put 1049 to go to Germany because of Rudy. You get an anxiety of you that you want to take care of business. So, I'm sorry.
You still feel it?
Oh, I do. Getting back to Rudy, when we would go out, he's a leader. He was a leader. You understand? He was a person that, when you go out and you got three fellas and you do crazy things and whatever, but, when you start doing crazy things, you say, hey, listen, man, when we come down, this is not the right thing to do. So we would come down, right? And he was the one that quiet us down and whatever, but sometimes, when you're young, and I was like a rebel. I was a rebel compared to them. And like I tell you, when I was in the service, they taught me discipline, whatever. But after that, Rudy, and then he went to service and he passed away and whatever. And then I got married with his sister, because after a year and a half that we wrote to each other, and then we made a date to get married after I got back and married. And now this family has grown. It's incredible, right? And we've seen you for so many years, and your brothers and your sister, and we love you all, and we try to keep everybody close.
Yeah.
That is the main thing. Vietnam was a lost. How can you fight an enemy? How can you go to a country and you don't know who your enemy is, right? Right? The person that's serving you or whatever is your enemy. Serving you a drink or whatever, they throw a grenade at you and whatever, kids and women. How can you fight people like that? Just like this, all these people, these insurgents, whatever, they're cowards. They don't fight a battle. They are cowards. He was a person that thought about somebody else even before he thought about himself. All the time. He would always think of somebody to do for somebody else before he did for himself. And when we would go out, this and that, we would do the same thing, but because he thought of that, and we talked among us the things that, because when you're growing up, it's a while. When you're a teenager, you're wild, but to go and help other people at that age, it's rare. It's rare.
Being selfless.
Yes.
But if you were alive today, what kind of examples do you think he'd be setting for people, for kids?
Well, I tell you, it would be a positive example. He would tell them to go to school, try to gain as much knowledge as you would so you could get ahead. Try to go into the service. It didn't make any difference what branch. He was a Marine, but it didn't make any difference to him at that time. But he was proud to be a Marine. I went into the Army, and I was proud to be in the Army. And where you serve, you're proud. But Rudy an example that he would have is for young people is to get an education, to be the best you can and to help other people. I think that would be the best example I could put that he would think to do for young people.
So he knew the value of education.
He did. He was a smart kid. He was a smart man. I think I got to see Rudy when he came back on leave. We went out a few nights, whatever, and even with Cesar Gomez, and he just said it was rough over there, and that was it. But he didn't mention. I never got a feeling that he thought he was not coming back. I guess different people, probably I wasn't the one that grasped that and that wasn't projected that. Probably it was somebody else, like your Uncle Nino,
Maybe.
I was telling you about when you go through the airports or whatever, when you got a basic training, and a lot of guys would tell me, says, when you go through the airports, they're going to call you baby killer and whatever. I says, you know what? I says, until I get to that point, I said, but I'll deal with the situation. And I'm glad I never did. But you walk through an airport with your dress outfit, whatever your dress screens were, there's nobody that can touch you. You're high, mighty. You walk through there like nothing. And nobody says nothing. But they will acknowledge you, they will acknowledge you. They know who you are. And that's what the service does for you. They make you a man, and they make you a person with dignity. Yeah. But a lot of people told me, a lot of social media, well, I'm going through an airport, and they told me that. I says, how come you didn't just take care of business, man? And that's incredible. But it never happened to me, thank the Lord. Yeah, or thank them, right?
People were smarter.
I guess it's a way you project yourself. And when you go through, and you think nothing's going to harm you, and the way you move and the way you project yourself, it's that, there's nothing that can touch you. And that's the way they taught us. There's nothing that can touch you.
You have to believe.
Yeah, and because that's the way you're trained.